The manila folder landed on my desk with a soft thud. Inside was a resume bearing a name I never expected to see in my office, Robert Callahan. The same Robert Callahan who married my sister 18 months ago at a ceremony I wasn't welcome to attend. The same man who had apparently decided that the family black sheep was suddenly worth acknowledging now that his investment firm had spectacularly collapsed. Funny how life works sometimes. I ran my finger along the edge of the folder, remembering the empty mailbox when wedding invitations went out, the ignored calls, the years of being treated like I didn't exist. Now here he was, hat in hand, unwittingly asking for salvation from the very person they'd all worked so hard to erase. I didn't start out with much. Southside Chicago, 2-bedroom apartment, single mom working 3 jobs. My sister Elise was always the golden child, straight A's, perfect attendance, homecoming queen. I was the troublemaker, the one teachers called home about, the disappointment. Not because I was stupid, tests showed I was actually gifted, but because I couldn't sit still, couldn't follow rules that made no sense to me. While Elise followed the prescribed path to success, I dropped out of college after 2 semesters. Throwing your life away, Mom called it. Maybe she was right at the time. When I told them I was starting a tech company instead of going back to school, the eye rolling was practically audible over the phone. Mom's disappointment had calcified into resignation by then. Elise, fresh from her master's program and engaged to Robert, didn't even bother hiding her derision. Another one of your schemes, she'd said, that familiar dismissive tone cutting through me like it always did. Good luck with that. The conversation ended there, as did most of our meaningful contact for the next 5 years. The irony wasn't lost on me as I sat in my corner office, 38 floors above downtown Chicago, running a company valued at just under $2 billion. Turns out my scheme had worked out pretty well. We revolutionized supply chain logistics software right as the pandemic hit, and suddenly every major retailer in the country wanted our product. I went from scrappy entrepreneur to CEO of one of the fastest-growing tech companies in the Midwest practically overnight. The money was nice, but the validation was better. I finally had proof that I wasn't the failure they'd all predicted I'd become. I heard a knock at my door and looked up to see Melissa, my executive assistant. "Your 2 o'clock is here," she said, her expression carefully neutral. She knew the situation. I'd filled her in after receiving Robert's unexpected email last week requesting a meeting. Should I send him in? Taking a deep breath, I straightened my tie and nodded. "Give me 2 minutes, then show him in." After she closed the door, I walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Chicago skyline. The city sprawled below me, a testament to ambition and perseverance. My city, the place where I'd proven everyone wrong. When the door opened again, I turned slowly, intentionally, power position established. Robert Callahan looked different than the last time I'd seen him from afar at a family gathering I'd crashed 3 years ago. His designer suit hung a little looser on his frame, and the confident smirk I remembered had been replaced by something approaching humility. His once perfect hair showed the first hints of gray at the temples. "Daniel," he said, extending his hand. "Thank you for taking this meeting. I really appreciate it." I let him stand there, hand outstretched, for 3 full seconds before stepping forward to shake it. A small power play, but satisfying nonetheless. "Robert, have a seat." He settled into one of the chairs across from my desk, adjusting his tie nervously. I remained standing for a moment longer, then took my seat, watching him squirm. The confident investment banker I'd heard so much about seemed diminished somehow. Good. So, I began, opening his folder. Logistic Core is always looking for talented people. Your resume is certainly impressive. I flipped through the pages slowly. Harvard Business School, Goldman Sachs, then his own investment firm, Callahan Capital. What the resume didn't mention was how spectacularly that firm had imploded last month after some questionable investments and a federal investigation into possible securities fraud. No charges had been filed yet, but the damage was done. His reputation was in tatters. "Thank you," he replied, his voice steady despite his obvious discomfort. "I've followed your company's growth. What you've accomplished is remarkable." "Is that so?" I leaned back in my chair. "Funny, I don't recall you ever expressing interest in my career before. In fact, I distinctly remember being described as the family disappointment with another harebrained scheme at your engagement dinner. The dinner I was only invited to after I insisted to my mother." Robert had the decency to look ashamed. "Daniel, look, about the past." "We'll get to that," I cut him off. "First, let's discuss why you're here. You need a job. Your firm collapsed. Your investors lost millions, and suddenly all those doors that used to open for Robert Callahan, financial wunderkind, are slamming shut. Am I close? His jaw tightened, but he nodded. Yes, that's essentially correct. And you think I should hire you because I'm good at what I do, he said, leaning forward. The situation with my firm was complicated. I made mistakes, but my track record before that was exceptional. I can bring value to Logistic Core. I allowed myself a small smile. That's a very corporate answer, Robert. Very polished. But it doesn't address the elephant in the room, does it? I closed his folder and leaned forward. You married my sister, whom I loved despite everything. You had a wedding. I wasn't invited. My own sister's wedding, and I found out about it from a Facebook post by a distant cousin. Do you have any idea what that feels like? Robert shifted uncomfortably. That was Elise's decision, and you went along with it. My voice remained calm, but I could feel heat rising in my chest. Just like you went along with every family gathering I was excluded from. Every holiday. Every birthday. You never once stood up and said, hey, maybe we should include Daniel. Not once. We had our reasons, he replied, his voice growing defensive. Oh, I know your reasons. I was the embarrassment. The dropout. The failure. Except now I'm not. Am I? Now I'm the successful CEO who might be able to save your career. I leaned back in my chair again. How's Elise, by the way? Still not speaking to me. Robert's expression tightened. She's struggling with everything that's happened. We both are. We had to sell the house. Move into a condo. It's been an adjustment. I'm sure it has, I replied, not bothering to hide my satisfaction. The mighty have fallen, as they say. Look, I know this is awkward, Robert said, attempting to regain his composure. But I'm here strictly on a professional basis. My personal connection to you could be seen as a conflict of interest, but I'm willing to start at a lower position than I might otherwise qualify for. I just need a chance. I studied him for a long moment. Tell me something, Robert. If the tables were turned, if I was the one whose company had failed and I came to you for help, what would you have done? He opened his mouth, then closed it again. After a moment, he admitted, I don't know. I think you do know, I countered. I think you would have had your secretary tell me you were busy. You would have ignored my calls. You would have done exactly what you and Elise have been doing to me for years. Pretend I don't exist unless you need something. Robert's face flushed. That's not fair, isn't it? I stood up and walked to the window again. You know what's not fair, Robert? Having your own family treat you like you're worthless because you don't follow their prescribed path to success. Having your sister, your only sibling, exclude you from the most important day of her life because she was embarrassed by you. That's not fair. For several seconds, the only sound in the room was the faint hum of the air conditioning. Then Robert spoke, his voice quieter than before. You're right. It wasn't fair. And for what it's worth, I did suggest inviting you to the wedding. Elise was adamant. I turned to face him. And you let her make that call. She's my wife, he said simply, as if that explained everything. She's my sister, I countered. And family is supposed to be there for each other through thick and thin. That's what I was always taught, anyway. Funny how that principle only seems to apply when it's convenient. Robert looked down at his hands. I know you have every right to throw me out of here, to enjoy watching me fail. But I'm asking you, professionally, to consider my application on its merits. I'm good at what I do, Daniel. One mistake doesn't erase years of success. One mistake. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Is that what you call it? You lost millions of dollars of other people's money. You're under investigation by the SEC. Your mistake destroyed people's retirement funds, college savings. People trusted you. I never meant for any of that to happen, Robert insisted, a note of desperation creeping into his voice. It was a calculated risk that didn't pay off. I've lost everything too, my reputation, my savings. Everything. Not everything, I corrected him. You still have Elise. You still have family. Something flashed across his face then, guilt, or perhaps shame. He hesitated before speaking again. Daniel, there's something else you should know. Something I didn't come here to tell you, but you deserve to hear it. My instincts told me this wasn't going to be good. I'm listening. Elise left me last week, he said quietly. She said she couldn't handle the downgrade in lifestyle. Her words, not mine. She's moved in with her friend Vanessa temporarily, but she's already talking to divorce attorneys. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Not because I was particularly surprised. Elise had always been materialistic, but because it confirmed everything I'd suspected about both of them. So she abandoned you the minute things got tough. Just like both of you abandoned me when I didn't fit your perfect family narrative. Robert didn't respond immediately. When he did, his voice had lost its defensive edge. I guess when you put it that way, there's a certain poetic justice to it all. I returned to my desk and sat down, studying the man across from me. The man who had everything I was supposed to want, the prestigious degrees, the successful career, my sister's love and respect, and who had lost it all. Part of me wanted to savor this moment, to revel in his downfall. But another part, a part one didn't particularly like to acknowledge, recognized something in his desperation. I knew what it was like to feel like you had no options left. Why did you really come to me, Robert? I asked finally. There are other companies, other cities. Why seek out the one person who has every reason to reject you? He met my gaze directly for the first time since entering my office. Because I knew you'd at least give me the courtesy of a meeting. Despite everything, I knew you weren't the type to reject someone without hearing them out. You're better than that. Better than us. His answer surprised me. It wasn't what I expected, and it didn't sound rehearsed. And if I do reject you? What then? Then I move on, he said simply. I try somewhere else. I start over. I do whatever it takes, because that's all I can do. For a moment, I saw myself in him, not the polished Harvard graduate, but the desperate hustler I'd been 5 years ago, knocking on doors, making cold calls, doing whatever it took to get my business off the ground. I remembered what it felt like when everyone thought I would fail, when no one believed in me except me. I reached for his resume again, flipping through it more carefully this time. His qualifications were undeniable. Harvard MBA, 10 successful years at Goldman, multiple awards and recognitions, one catastrophic failure. Tell me about what happened at Callahan Capital, I said. The real story, not the press release version. Robert took a deep breath. We were over-leveraged on some high-risk investments. I trusted the wrong people, ignored some warning signs I should have seen. When the market shifted, we didn't have the liquidity to cover our positions. It happened fast. Within weeks, we went from profitable to insolvent. And the SEC investigation? One of my partners was engaged in some questionable practices, trading on information he shouldn't have had. I didn't know about it until it was too late, but as the face of the company, I'm taking the fall. He shrugged. The investigation will clear me eventually, but my reputation is shot. No one in finance will touch me now. So you thought you'd try tech instead? I thought I'd try the one person who might understand what it's like to be written off, he replied. Who knows what it feels like when no one believes in you? His words hit home in a way I wasn't prepared for. Was that what this was about? Was he actually seeing me, really seeing me, for the first time? Or was this just another manipulation, another way to get what he wanted? I stood up and walked to a credenza against the wall, pouring myself a glass of water. I offered one to Robert, who accepted it gratefully. Let me tell you a story, I said, leaning against the credenza. When I dropped out of college, my mom cried for 3 days straight. She said I was throwing away my future, that I'd end up flipping burgers or worse. Elise, who was already in her master's program by then, sent me a text saying, and I quote, "Way to confirm what we all knew about you." Robert winced but didn't interrupt. For the next 2 years, I worked 80-hour weeks building my company. No vacations, no social life, just work. When I tried to tell my family about our first major client, Elise changed the subject to her new promotion. When we secured our first $1 million in funding, my mom asked when I was going to get a real job with benefits. I took a sip of water. Do you know what kept me going during that time? Robert shook his head. Spite, I admitted with a small smile. Pure, unadulterated spite. I was going to succeed just to prove them wrong. To force them to acknowledge that I wasn't the failure they thought I was. I set my glass down. And then something unexpected happened. I stopped caring what they thought. I realized I was building something important, something that mattered, and their approval became irrelevant. That's when you really started to succeed, Robert guessed. I nodded. Funny how that works, isn't it? The moment I stopped trying to prove myself to people who would never see my value was the moment I truly found it. And now? Robert asked, do you still not care what they think? It was a perceptive question, one that cut closer to the bone than I liked to admit. I tell myself I don't, I said honestly. But the fact that we're having this conversation suggests otherwise, doesn't it? The admission hung in the air between us, a rare moment of vulnerability that I immediately regretted. I straightened and returned to business mode. Your qualifications are impressive, Robert. But I have concerns about both your judgment and your loyalty, two qualities I value highly in my executive team. That's fair, he acknowledged. All I can say is that people can change. Circumstances can change them. He gestured around my office. Look at you. You're not the same person your family dismissed years ago. Maybe I'm not the same person who went along with excluding you either. Pretty words, I replied. But actions speak louder, don't they? And your actions, both professionally and personally, haven't exactly inspired confidence. Robert nodded, accepting the criticism. I deserve that. But everyone deserves a second chance, don't they? Isn't that what you wanted from your family? A chance to prove yourself. The difference is, I never betrayed them, I pointed out. I just chose a different path. You're right, he conceded. And I can undo the past. All I can do is try to be better going forward. He leaned forward, his expression earnest. Give me a chance, Daniel. Not as your brother-in-law. That relationship is probably beyond repair at this point, but as someone who can bring value to your company. If I don't perform, fire me. No special treatment, no second chances. Just an opportunity to prove myself. I considered him for a long moment. The rational business decision would be to show him the door. His baggage, both personal and professional, made him a risky hire at best. But there was something compelling about his humility, about watching someone who had once had everything now fighting for the bare minimum. Here's what I'm going to do, I said finally. We have an opening in our financial analysis department. It's not executive level. You'd be reporting to our CFO. The salary is about a third of what you're probably used to, but it would be a foot in the door. Hope flickered across Robert's face. I'll take it. I haven't finished. I held up a hand. There are conditions. First, you'd be on a 6-month probationary period, during which you could be terminated at any time for any reason. Second, you would need to be fully transparent about the SEC investigation, any developments, any requests for information, anything at all. And third, you would need to maintain strict professional boundaries. No leveraging our personal connection, no going around your supervisor to come directly to me. Understood, Robert nodded eagerly. Those terms are more than fair. I walked back to my desk and sat down. There's one more condition, I said, my voice hardening slightly. You need to understand that this is strictly business. I'm not doing this to reconcile with you or with Elise. I'm not doing this out of family obligation. I'm doing this because, despite everything, you might actually be an asset to my company. Is that clear? Crystal clear, Robert replied, his relief palpable. Thank you, Daniel. I won't let you down. See that you don't, I said, closing his folder. Melissa will send you the formal offer letter and paperwork by the end of the day. Assuming everything checks out, you can start next Monday. Robert stood and extended his hand across the desk. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. I know I haven't earned your trust yet, but I will. I shook his hand, maintaining my professional demeanor. We'll see. After he left, I remained at my desk, staring at the closed door. I wasn't entirely sure I'd made the right decision. Part of me, a significant part, had wanted to reject him, to savor the sweet taste of revenge. To make him feel a fraction of the exclusion I'd felt all these years. But another part recognized that doing so would make me no better than those who had rejected me. My phone buzzed with a text message. Elise. After years of minimal contact, suddenly she was reaching out. I stared at her name on the screen, debating whether to open it. Finally, curiosity won out. Heard you're considering giving Robert a job. How could you betray me like this? I almost laughed out loud at the audacity. After everything, she was accusing me of betrayal? I typed and deleted several responses before finally settling on one. This is between Robert and me. Business only. But if you ever want to talk about real betrayal, I'm here. I set my phone down and turned to my computer, throwing myself back into work. An hour later, Melissa knocked on my door. The offer letter for Robert Callahan is ready for your approval, she said, placing a folder on my desk. Thank you, I replied, opening it to review the terms. Are you sure about this? She asked hesitantly. She was one of the few people who knew the full story of my family situation. After everything they did to you? I sighed, leaning back in my chair. No, I'm not sure. But sometimes the hardest business decisions are also the most personal ones. And sometimes the line between business and personal gets blurry, she observed. Exactly. I signed the letter and handed it back to her. Send it out today, please. After Melissa left, I swiveled in my chair to face the windows. The Chicago skyline was bathed in the golden light of late afternoon, skyscrapers gleaming like beacons against the deepening blue sky. Somewhere out there, Robert was probably celebrating his good fortune, relief washing over him. Somewhere else, Elise was fuming, her sense of betrayal ironically mirroring my own from years ago. My phone buzzed again, another text from Elise. I opened it, bracing myself for more accusations. I need to see you. Can we meet for coffee tomorrow? Now that was unexpected. After years of being the one to reach out only to be rebuffed, the tables had turned completely. I considered ignoring her, giving her a taste of her own medicine. But something stopped me, the realization that perpetuating the cycle of hurt wouldn't heal anything. Okay. Davis Cafe, 9 a.m., I replied. Her response came almost immediately. I'll be there. As I set my phone down, I felt a strange mix of emotions, anticipation, apprehension, and something close to peace. Whatever happened tomorrow, whatever came of Robert's new position, I knew I had made my decisions from a place of strength rather than bitterness. I had chosen to be better than those who had hurt me, not because they deserved my grace, but because I deserved to live without the weight of resentment. The next morning, I arrived at Davis Cafe 10 minutes early, selecting a table by the window. I watched the door, curious to see if Elise would actually show up. At precisely 9 o'clock, she walked in, looking both familiar and strange. Her designer clothes had been replaced by jeans and a simple blouse, and her perfectly highlighted hair was pulled back in a casual ponytail. She spotted me immediately and approached, her expression a mixture of defiance and uncertainty. Daniel, she said, sliding into the seat across from me. Thank you for meeting me. Of course, I replied, studying her face. She looked tired, the confident shine I remembered dimmed somewhat by recent events. How are you, Elise? Really? She seemed surprised by the genuine concern in my voice. I'm managing, she said after a moment. It's been a difficult adjustment. I can imagine, I said, not unkindly. Coffee. She nodded, and I signaled the waiter. After ordering, we sat in awkward silence for a moment before she spoke again. Robert told me you offered him a job, she said, getting straight to the point. I did. Why? She demanded, some of her old fire returning. After everything, why would you help him? Is it to get back at me somehow? I laughed softly. Not everything is about you, Elise. Believe it or not, I made a business decision. Robert is qualified for the position, despite his recent troubles. So this has nothing to do with me? With our family? Her disbelief was evident. Did my exclusion from your wedding have anything to do with me? I countered. Or was that just a wedding planning decision that happened to cut out your only brother? Elise had the grace to look ashamed. That was different. Was it? I raised an eyebrow. Explain the difference to me. The waiter arrived with our coffees, giving Elise a moment to collect her thoughts. After he left, she took a sip, then set her cup down carefully. I was wrong, she said finally, the words seeming to cost her something. About the wedding. About a lot of things. I let Mom convince me that you wouldn't want to come anyway, that you'd feel out of place with all our successful friends. She made air quotes around the word. I knew it was wrong, but it was easier to go along with it than to fight. And now? I asked. Now that your successful husband has fallen from grace and your dropout brother is the successful one? How does that fit into your worldview? She flinched at my words. I deserve that. But it's not just about the money or the success, Daniel. It's about, I don't know, stability? Security? Robert promised me those things, and then it all fell apart overnight. So you left him, I stated flatly. It's more complicated than that, she protested. Is it? I leaned forward. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you abandoned him the minute things got tough. Just like you abandoned me when I didn't follow the path you approved of. Tears welled in her eyes. I know how it looks. But you don't understand what it's been like. The humiliation, the gossip, the friends who suddenly won't return my calls. Everything I built my life around just disappeared. Despite everything, I felt a pang of sympathy for her. I do understand, actually. More than you know. The difference is, I never had anything to lose. I built from nothing. You're just now learning what that feels like. She wiped away a tear. And you're enjoying watching me learn that lesson, aren't you? I considered her question carefully. No, I said truthfully. I'm not. Believe it or not, Elise, I never wanted to see you fail or suffer. Even after everything, you're still my sister. I just wanted you to see me. To respect my choices even if you didn't understand them. Her gaze dropped to her coffee cup. I do see you now. I see how wrong I was. But it's too late, isn't it? For what? For us, she gestured between us. For family. I sat back, studying her. The mighty Elise, humbled at last. But her question stirred something in me. A memory of us as children, before expectations and judgments drove us apart. Of her helping me with homework, defending me from bullies, being the big sister I had once adored. It's not too late, I said finally. But it won't be easy either. Trust has to be rebuilt. On both sides. Hope flickered in her eyes. How do we start? Well, I smiled slightly. I've already hired your soon-to-be ex-husband. That's something, isn't it? She actually laughed at that, a genuine sound I hadn't heard in years. God, that's weird, isn't it? My brother becoming my ex's boss. Life is full of strange twists, I agreed. Speaking of which, what's next for you? She shrugged, suddenly looking vulnerable. I don't know. I gave up my career when I married Robert. I haven't worked in years. I'm staying with Vanessa for now, but I need to figure something out. I nodded, an idea forming. Our HR department is looking for someone with good interpersonal skills. It's entry-level, but it's a start. If you're interested. Her eyes widened in surprise. You do that? After everything? I consider your application, I clarified. No guarantees, no special treatment. Just like with Robert. The job would be yours to earn or lose on your own merits. She stared at me for a long moment. Why are you being so kind? I wouldn't be, if our situations were reversed. I know, I said simply. And that's the difference between us. I don't want to perpetuate the cycle, Elise. Someone has to break it. She reached across the table and placed her hand on mine, the first time she had touched me in years. Thank you, she whispered. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm grateful for it. Don't thank me yet, I warned, though I didn't pull my hand away. This is just the beginning of a very long road. But it is a beginning, she said, a tentative smile forming on her lips. And that's something, isn't it? As I looked at my sister, really looked at her, I saw past the designer clothes she used to wear, past the judgment and dismissal, to the person underneath who was just as lost and searching as I had once been. In that moment, I made a choice. Not to forget the past, but to refuse to let it dictate my future. To be the bigger person not because they deserved it, but because I deserved peace. Yes, I agreed, squeezing her hand briefly before releasing it. It's something. Outside the cafe window, the morning sun cast long shadows across the Chicago streets. People hurried by, each wrapped in their own stories of triumph and failure, connection and alienation. And inside, two siblings who had lost their way were taking the first tentative steps toward finding each other again. Not because of success or failure, not because of vindication or redemption, but because sometimes, even after everything, family is still family. And sometimes, the hardest person to forgive is also the most important. As we finished our coffee and prepared to go our separate ways, for now, I felt lighter somehow. The burden of resentment I'd carried for so long seemed less oppressive. There would be difficult conversations ahead, boundaries to establish, trust to rebuild. But for the first time in years, I felt something close to hope when I thought about my family. Not the perfect family I'd once longed for, but something real, something honest, something worth building, one careful step at a time. And that, I decided as I walked back to my office under the bright morning sky, was enough for today.